Would you have turned the sprinklers on?
No.
I think a lot of people...
I get myself in a lot of trouble by saying, but no, I don't think that wasn't the sharpest thing to have done.
And you wouldn't have played Barry Manilow?
No, definitely not.
You know what, Gerry? I know it sounds like a flippant question, but I think it actually is quite an important one for this new Parliament moving forward. And I thank you for for being prepared to answer it.
Look, I have a strong view that some of the sort of overlay of security that's around Parliament is understandable. But I would hate to see a time when people couldn't come and, have their lunch on the lawn out the front, or just, wander through the place if they're on their way to somewhere else. I think that's a very important part of accessibility, and because it is a great big stone building, and people can't just walk in these days. They used to be able to, as you know.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep it as accessible as possible, so that people understand it's in a free society. Then your lawmaking process should exhibit some of the freedom that we all like to think we have.
All right, Gerry, a couple of other things, and I'm getting crowdsourced questions here for you. In the hypothetical possibility that you will become the Speaker, we are, and boy, some new research out this from Jonathan Haidt, we are banning cell phones in schools. What about the debating chamber?
They are pretty much banned in there. People might be texting on them, but you certainly can't make phone calls while you're in there.
Okay, well, what about the texting? Because if we've seen with the Greens, that can distract them for what's going on and from going on, that they should be paying attention to.
Yeah, that's true, but it's also, don't forget, Dr. Google provides an awful lot of information very quickly.
Yeah.
And so if you've got someone making outrageous claims, if you go back a couple of decades, people could go in there and say all sorts of things.
And there were messages scurrying back to the library to get the appropriate documents.
But it could even be several days before there was a question raised about what they might be saying. So I don't have too much of a problem with people using their phones for instant research. I think that's pretty reasonable.
All right. Okay. That's one off the list. The other one says the dress code. What is the dress code going to be? Are you going to get away with cowboy lanyards and cowboy hats or not?
Well, the dress code is determined largely by the business committee, who meet and have a discussion about these things. You've also got a standing orders committee. So the Speaker doesn't have a direct role in saying this will be the code. But I'll tell you my personal view. I think that, people send their representatives to Parliament. They want them to at least appear to be in a sort of a tidy business-like attire, so that they can, be demonstrating that they're there to represent someone else, not their own personal sort of, beliefs or otherwise.
Yeah. Gerry, I've seen you in full point of order flight a few times. You're one of the most experienced people in the chamber. There are a few other old hands who are back in Parliament. You've got to protect the people. Who's the first person? Yeah, a guy called Winston Peters has been round, but he's very good. I don't know. Winston's great at the bluster, not necessarily the technicalities of point of orders and being outraged. I can't really ask you, but who do you think, if I was a betting man, who should I bet on being the first person to get kicked out of this Parliament?
Well, I hope there's no one kicked out. I think, well, I've got to give that answer, don't I? Because I think there should be a high degree of tolerance. I've always maintained that, you look at various parliaments around the world, they break down, there's massive scraps and all the rest of it. The two sides of Parliament, the opposition and the government side, are separated by the table through the middle, but the distance between them is the length of 2.5 broadswords. And so originally it was so that one side couldn't pull out the swords and start chopping the heads off the other. And I think if you in New Zealand, we tend to have a fairly vigorous argument, but we don't get into that sort of like emotional hatred stuff that really you've got to avoid. So I think higher tolerance for, the emotion that might occasionally come wouldn't be necessarily a bad thing. It's all circumstantial, and each circumstance would be different.